In the Season of Discovery DPS department, the players are represented by two separate yet equal groups: the damage dealers and the people who make tier lists for a living. In this episode, we're going to investigate the high-profile case of my botched pre-Phase 7 DPS tier list. This is the tale of missed predictions and faulty assumptions set against the ominous backdrops of Kel'Thuzad and the Lich King. Our story begins with a grave offense, a DPS tier list with some key errors, leading thousands of dedicated gamers astray. Your humble host here, the perpetrator of this DPS tier list, I'm ready to right the wrongs and seek some redemption. Armed with fresh, never-before-seen Warcraft logs, and driven by my own personal quest for redemption after experiencing floor POV the entirety of the first week, I'm on a mission to correct the record. Each raid night becomes a crime scene investigation as we unearth the truth, error by error. Join me on this self-exploratory journey as we expose the hidden truths of DPS simulations, rectify past mistakes, and reveal the true champions of destruction in Phase 7's most intense battles. In the Season of Discovery DPS department, the hunt for justice is on, and no DPS calculation is safe from scrutiny. Okay, so in all seriousness, I messed up with the last tier list. My original understanding of Phase 7, everybody was going to be doing 50,000 damage, but I never factored in that the bosses would have massively increased health as well, and the fights would just be so much longer too. That means, at least until raid nerfs hit, classes like the Warlocks, for example, where I had written them off, they get to absolutely shine in Phase 7. So to right my wrongs, I'm going to re-rank all the classes from C to S tier to determine the actual very best class in Phase 7. Starting off in the C tier, these are the classes looking to really lag behind in Phase 7. The massive shock starting us off is the Rogue. I expected rogues to look extremely good early on. After all, they're extremely impressive in AQ 40, and whenever I watch Twitch, I pull up my friend Simon Eyes, he's topping the meters, whether he's Saber Slash, whether he's Mutilate. The reality, though, is that rogues are falling way behind, and the higher the difficulty gets in Nax. Even if you look at rogues with their full tier set, their BIS weapons, none of the rogue specs are projected to even be above average by the end of Phase 7. Worse yet, the guilds that are clearing Mythic Nexramas, they're not really bringing rogues at all, and the ones they do bring are kind of underperforming. We've also got to talk Enhanced Shamans, and the bad news. First, barely any of the top progression guilds are Horde, so it's very hard to get Enhancement Shaman data. Frankly, I'm blaming the successful lobbying of the Alliance players over the last year, but either way, it's hard to actually analyze how good Enhanced Shamans are in a real raid environment. If you do manage to find a mythic progression BIS Enhanced Shaman swinging that massive totem weapon, you're likely going to notice that their damage is a bit underwhelming. The latest sims, the latest projections as well, definitely back that up. Enhanced Shaman is unfortunately going to be an average class's phase. Not that any of that should stop you from making an Enhanced Shaman to be the god of horde tanking, and a 600 gold per hour dungeon machine too. Moving into the B tier, these are the classes that are just about average in the phase. Starting off the B tier, we've got to talk about Retribution Paladins, and they definitely started off Phase 7 very well, providing everything you could want for a progression raid, the utility, the damage. But as we get further into the phase, Rets are starting to slip backwards. Many of the top mythic guilds are kind of stacking ranged DPS, and they're more or less skipping out on Ret Paladins, at least for now. Do you guys think that the hardest content in Classic WoW should be designed in a way where certain classes have to be brought? Or should the raid be balanced in a way where any comp can work? Also talking Warriors. Warriors are the literal perfect class for dominating Phase 8, except the problem is it isn't Phase 8 yet. They have the highest burst potential in the entire game. They scale extremely well, and they've got the best weapons of any class by far. If every Nax fight was 15-20 seconds, Warriors would be number one by over 10,000 DPS. But the longer than expected Nax fights really aren't doing them any favors, and in a further hit to morale, the corrupted Ashbringer's been moved to Phase 8, so you won't even get to use it until then. You guys have any predictions on which class you think will be the number one DPS in Scarlet Monastery? At this point, if it's not Warrior, I'm probably going to be disappointed. Also in the B tier, Mages. And I was expecting crazy, broken damage from Mages in Phase 7. Their insane set bonuses like Ignite never decaying on targets below 20% HP. That still sort of looks like it'll be the case in the endgame, especially with your haste scale and your ATS staff, but you're really not going to be topping the meters consistently. Mages really won't want to hear this part either, but healing mages seem to be the real winner in Phase 7. They are the best healer by far, and they're making me really want to retire my healing priest for good. Moving into Ellie Shamans, if the metric was fun per hour, the Ellie Shamans would win by a mile. Whether it is destroying trash packs, exploding alliance, they're at the top. But Ellie Shamans are best on fights with multiple targets, and Nax really isn't giving you that many of those. Plus, unlike some other classes, your scaling isn't broken, and you don't really have a way to ramp up on longer fights. Moving into the A tier, these are the very above average classes you really want in your raid. Starting off the A tier, we've got the Feral Druids, and they really aren't positioned where I expect them to be at the start of the phase. I've already watched multiple Eye of Naruk tier set having Feral Druids. They're outputting less damage than I really would have expected. Is it a skill issue? Because I'm not so sure. The newest data is pointing to Pharaohs being above average at best, but really not more than that. I'm sorry, Pharaohs. It kind of seems like I got ahead of myself in the last video. We've also got to talk about Hunters, and in my last tier list, I had Hunters as actually the worst class. And raiding Nax, having experience in myself, seeing Hunters in action, they're routinely ending up near the top of the meters. I think I was mostly burned by Hunter sims for such a long time because the actual gameplay never measures up to the data. Seeing so many of these top guilds, they're running Hunters, they're relying on Hunters, and they're performing extremely well every time. It's got me thinking maybe I should dust off my Hunter and go for the Nerubian Slave Maker dream. Have you guys seen any really unexpected chart toppers in Phase 7 so far? Because the Hunters were a huge surprise for me. Talking Boomkins, the Phase 6 gods are back, but not better than ever, at least unless you want to focus on trash damage. Still, you do very good single target damage as well. You're already insane Starfighters, they're amped up by 20% more with your new Dreamwalker set. But so much of your rotation is Starfall damage, and you lose a lot of Starfall splash damage on the single target fights. Going into the S tier, these are the real biggest winners of Phase 7. First up in the S tier, we have Shadow Priests, and I'm not gonna lie, they have really carried our progression so far in Nax. You look at the meters after most of the hard fights, and there are the Shadow Priests at the very top. And to make matters worse, they're out-healing my Holy Priest. With the theme of Mythic Naxxramas being that the fights are long, they're hard, being able to snapshot your dots for the entire fight with Power Infusion is extremely huge. I'd also say that your new rotation of almost entirely hard-casted spells, it scales really well. We've also got to talk Warlocks, and Season of Discovery balancing. It's really fascinating to me, because your class can either be the best in the game or the worst in the game, based on a very small tweak like boss HP. Take Warlocks. Their new tier bonuses, the Infinite Curse of Agony, the extra damage on your Shadow Flame, your Corruption. If you give them a 10-minute fight, they are going to massively out-DPS any other class in the game. But if you give them a 15-second fight, they are going to be at the very bottom of the meters. At least until any possible boss HP nerfs come in though, this is the time where Warlocks are really going to be dominating. They are the kings of these fights. So there you have it, the new, improved, definitive Phase 7 DPS tier list. From Rogues dropping to the bottom, to Warlocks skyrocketing, to never-before-seen positions, it's about to get crazy. Do you agree or are you angry with these rankings? Because you gotta let me know in the comments. I want your hottest, I want your spiciest takes. If you enjoyed this new, improved DPS tier list, hit like and subscribe, because I've got some crazy new Season of Discovery videos coming soon. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you at the top of the meters, if you're a Warlock.